Hi. So we are going to talk about trace operators today, and we had a discussion in the last launch week that we are going to bring in trace operators. So what essentially trace operators help you with? So trace operators is a functionality which helps you with bringing in relations between the spans in a particular trace. So let's just say we want a trace where the parent span is something and the child span is something, and there is some relation that let's just say we are in a fintech company and we want to find that someone has come into my application and they have initiated a payment and then it has gone to the customer service and it might have failed because of n number of reasons, because it might have failed due to a database error. So we need to find a trace which has the front end calling to the database in some direct or indirect fashion, and it has an error. Earlier we weren't able to do that, but now with the introduction of trace operators we can. Let's just see how. Let's do one thing. Let's write in service.name is equals to front end. We are going to use our search span scope, which we discussed in the last launch week. So we are going to also try and get the root spans, which has the service name of front end. We are going to add a new query, which is service.name is equals to redis manual, and it has an error. So and has error is equals to true. Let's add a trace operator. So what trace operators give us is the number of queries that there are, A, and we want an indirect relationship that the B span should be somewhere in the trace which has originated from the A span. So A with an indirect descendant relationship of B, and let's just try and get that span. Let's just see that. So we will get a list view of the A query where the front end span is the root span of a trace. So we see that the front end span is the root span of the trace, which has the Redis manual span, which has an error. So if we go there and we find we have a Redis manual span service which has an error, which has originated from a trace which has the root span as front end. So now we can do that in a very swift manner rather than doing hit and trials where we had to find out the front end span or the Redis manual span individually. Now we do not have to do that. We can also use multiple trace operators. So let's just say we want to also find a cart service. So service dot name is equals to cart service, and we want that the A can have a direct descendant of B or C. So let's just say we write B or C, right? So let's just beautify it a little bit, but it will work either way, and we try and get that result as well. So it will give me a list. Let's just wait for it. So it's giving me a list of the front end spans which might have a cart service linked to it or a Redis manual span which has an error. So let's just go there and find out. So this is a trace with the Redis manual span. Let's just find a trace with the cart service instead. Also the same thing, view is across all the views in the trace explorer. So it's the list view, the trace view, the time series view, the table view. Let's just delete that and let's simplify it a little bit so that I can give you a better demo. Let's just say that, and let's go to the trace view and let's get a bunch of traces which has the whole thing rather than just the number of spans. So we went into this trace, we found out that there is a front end span which is the root span. Now I can get and find what is the Redis manual span, and we can from this example we can find the traces which are matching these. This is also relevant in time series data. In the time series data we are going to get a count of this whole thing. After the 3rd of September we do not have any data for anything either ways, but we are getting all this data here. In the tabular view we get the number of traces in the particular thing. So let's just say we are going to count and we are going to try and group by or something. So we are going to get that in the last 3 days. This whole thing is also relevant across a multiple of places such as alerts. If I go into an alert, we create a new alert rule in the trace based alert, we find that the whole thing is there in the trace based alert as well. So let's just add a trace matching and it will give me a very similar view. So service dot name is equals to front end and service dot name is equals to cart service, and we want a is order, like that, and let's stage and run query for the last 3 days. So we are getting some values, and we can make some of the alert rules on this as well. So this is the same thing is also persistent across dashboards as well. If we go to the dashboard, we create a new panel, we can create a new list panel, and or let's just say a number panel, and we are trying to go to the traces and we are going to create trace matching. So the first is service dot name is equals to front end, and the next one would be service. Okay, so that is a metric, so we need to change it to traces. Service dot name is equals to cart service, and we go to the trace operators is and we get the return. So we get the number of results from here. So this is how trace operators is there. So trace operators essentially helps you query the relationship between the spans in a trace. I would hope that would help you. Just go to traces and you can try it out with adding a trace operators functionality. You can use n number of traces to do so. Thank you so much. Hope you like it.